Boom. There it is.
And we're live. Good evening, Ericka.
Hello, Robert.
Hello, Ericka. Love the look today. It looks like a gangster look you got today.
I did this for you, Robert, because of your roots.
Because I'm a gangster. Because I'm a gangster, right? From New Jersey.
You like the accent and everything. It's very mob bossy. So I was like, what can I wear that will make me look like a mob boss's like wife kind of like
I got it. Well,
I meant to wear big diamond rings. Dang it.
There you go. So speaking of mobs, right? You know, we like to start off with the most outrageous thing under the heading of sort of mob government overreach. Yeah. Norwood, Massachusetts. Some 12-year-old kid was raising money for his brother's autistic special needs hockey team, and they shut him down for selling ice cream without a permit. I mean, I shouldn't laugh at this stuff, but you want to talk about government? Yeah. So Norwood, Massachusetts, right?
Bro.
Danny Dougherty, if I'm pronouncing that right. You know, I'm never good with those Irish names, right? You know, basically he was bored. Mom says, open instead of a lemonade stand, an ice cream stand. So he starts selling ice cream. He gets a letter from the town a week later that somebody ratted him out. And basically, because he was making his own ice cream, hang on, let me get this right. The Norwood Health Department has received a complaint that you are making and selling scooped ice cream and cookies at your residential property. Massachusetts Food Code, blah, 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 does not allow for the sale of ice cream made in the home. Please desist in these activities. I just sit here. You want to talk about mob government overreach? Hello. Can't hear you, but I'm here anyway.
I get muted. How dare you?
I liked it when you were muted, but no, I'm just kidding. But
I know who else would like it if somebody was muted is that Doherty kid. How do you, bro? They should mute the rat. Who ratted this kid out? Come on.
Well, so there is a happy ending.
Massachusetts. Okay.
So they had made all this ice cream, right? So the mother said, you know what? Because it's for an autistic, special needs hockey team, which his brother is on. So the mother, said to the neighbor, you know what? We're not going to sell it. We're going to give it away. We're going to give it away, but we will accept donations. So they raised $7,500 for the, let me get this right, for a Tree Street Treats for the, I'm trying to get the hockey name. They made $7,500, which is great, for the Boston Bears Club, which is a special needs hockey team. So, there is a God and there is justice. But when you talk about mob or government overreach, it's just,
all under the guise of protecting you, Robert. You're just a sweet, delicate little flower, and you need us to care for you and caress you and take care of you.
Well, I know you're not talking about me because, A, I don't need protection, and B, nobody I know wants to give it to me anyway. So that's okay. But anyway, so let's roll with the show and let's keep going.
All right. And we're back.
Hello, and welcome to Of the People. We are back. And before we roll into the monologue, I want to let everybody know to make sure you stay tuned for our last segment. Steve Rosenberg, innovator, author, speaker, former COO of Jewish Federation in Philadelphia, runs the, I think, Philadelphia Sports Hall of Fame, just a really strong Israel advocate and knows more in 5 minutes about Israel than you and I put together. So folks, stay tuned. We were going to have him on the first segment, but timing issue. He's going to be on the last segment of the show. Steve Rosenberg, you don't want to miss that. And there's that.
All right. And here's the monologue.
Yeah. Where's the monologue?
Is it
Ericka?
Is it here?
No.
No monologue? No monologue.
No, you're really, well, I think that was your idea today, as I recall.
Well, Robert, I know we have a routine, you guys. We have a normal routine we do here. We come on, we chit chat, and we decided to do something a little bit different today because we thought it was important for our audience, for our viewers to understand not just why our guests think Israel Appreciation Day is so important, but why Robert thinks Israel Appreciation Day is so important. And and this is really an opportunity for you, our audience, to get to know Robert a little bit better, where he comes from, what his background is, and again, why these things are so important, why he's so passionate about it. And excuse me. So we decided we're changing up the format a little bit, and it's me getting to interview you today, Robert Chernin.
No tough questions, please. I am not prepared.
All I have are tough questions. If anybody who's watched the show for any length of time, if you've been around at our excuse me. Hold on, guys.
Uh-oh. Frog in your throat?
Totally. If any of you have been around for our after hours, we joke and say, "Oh, where Ben and Erica ask Robert Jewish stuff."
And
And
Robert S. Ben, black stuff.
right, exactly. And we joke about that, but there's a real sincere seriousness to it. And the reason is, in my belief, it is my belief that lack of proximity is the greatest problem that we face in understanding one another when we're dealing with hate, misunderstanding, whatever it is. A lot of times people just don't understand each other. If you've never grown up around Jewish people, if you've never grown up around Christians or black people or fill in the blank, you don't know and you don't understand where they're coming from, their background, why they think what they do, and it makes it harder to understand one another. And uh, you know, Jewish things that are related to Judaism, Jewishness, Israel are so sensitive nowadays, Robert. Um, you know,
They are,
and
especially to the pro Hamas Death Eaters, as I call them. But go ahead.
so, we hear a lot, or we heard a lot during the Black Lives Matter riots and during that movement about the talk, right? All Black parents have the talk with their kids about cops and about this and about that. And I wondered if you could share a little bit about what maybe your parents, what the talk was like from your parents about the history of the Jewish people.
That's a pretty wide open question. Let me start this way: that I grew up in New Jersey in an integrated neighborhood in terms of religions and also in terms of race. It wasn't hugely diverse, but it was certainly diverse for its time. It was in Union County. I remember driving around, seeing signs at various institutions that would say "No Jews allowed."
Mm.
Right. So that was stuff. And I would ask my dad, and there was a golf course, there was some private clubs, some other things. Honestly, he never made a big deal about it. He just sort of, shrugged his shoulders and said, that's some of the things you got to get used to. I
Mm.
still remember on the playground in 6th grade, someone called me a kike. I didn't really respond real well. He ended up with something broken, but that's okay. And I ended up suspended because, of course, I was the one who started it.
Of course.
My dad always taught me that you got to fight for what you believe in, and that look, the whole concept of fairness really is a misnomer, right? I mean, fair is
Mhm.
always a question of who's defining it. So, growing up, I mean, again, the neighborhood was integrated in terms of religion, whether it was Christianity or Jewish, and there were some other families of different religions there. So really, it was except in certain areas in New Jersey, it was fine. So it wasn't really a talk, but I always remember, in the classroom that they would say the Pledge of Allegiance, which obviously was great, and then there was usually a morning prayer or a moment of silence or something about Christianity or Jesus. That was a little odd to me, but my dad always used to say, look, as long as you know who you are,
Mm.
those kinds of things shouldn't bother you, and let people be who they are. So, I mean, I won't say it was uber tolerant, but it certainly wasn't intolerant either.
Yeah. So it's funny to hear you say that there were signs that said things like "No Jews allowed," because I'm trying to think of the time period. I mean, is this when we're still having
In the 60s.
segregated? So this was when we're still having
This is,
segregated
yeah.
lunch counters and all this kind of stuff. So
Well,
what's
it wasn't quite well in New Jersey. There was no. I mean, remember in the '60s, any segregation was really relegated mostly to the South, but
Mm,
the southern states. But that doesn't mean there wasn't racism or there wasn't that the black community tended to congregate in a certain area, whether it was Plainfield or somewhere else in New Jersey. The Jewish community generally tended to, depending on, I guess, sort of your, whether you were Reformed or conservative or Orthodox,
mm,
it would depend on sort of the density of population of the community you were in. I grew up conservative,
yeah.
which is sort of the middle one, right? Reform is more, let's call it more liberal, Orthodox,
Orthodox is
right.
where you have
So,
two kitchens.
um, well, we didn't have two kitchens, I can tell you that. So, but I grew up. I will tell you that when I grew up, I actually where I sort of really connected with being Jewish is when I went to college in Montreal. Right,
Really?
Montreal has a very large Jewish community, and it sometimes takes you to step outside of yourself or outside of your comfort zone to sort of look back and see where you came from and who you were. Right. So not only did I become much more patriotic and more sort of American focused being in a foreign country. And most people say, well, it's only Montreal. It's not really a foreign country. You
Yeah.
drive through a toll booth, bonjour, quel est votre nom? Hello, what is your name? You drive through the toll booth, you're in a different country. But it really did force me to look at my upbringing, both as an American, but as someone who grew up, and is Jewish. And it's really in college that started to really come into its own. Other than that, it was just sort of the way the cards were dealt. And my dad, there was no talk per se,
Mm,
as I think you and I have talked about, or you, Ben, and I have talked about.
yeah.
And then certainly as I got into my 20s and into my 30s, Judaism became much more personal to me, much more important to me as I got older,
Mm,
because obviously you have to, at some point take responsibility for who and what you are and what you believe in. So,
yeah. Yeah. So I sort of laughed when you said that, because when you said the no Jew sign, because nowadays if you're Jewish, you're white adjacent. So in one generation, Jewish people have gone from being basically second class citizens, or essentially, to being white oppressors. And I think that's kind of like, how did we get there in one generation?
well, I think you got to start a little earlier. I mean, when I grew up, you still heard whispers of, well, the Jews killed Jesus, right? I mean, there was still that kind of of sort of a divide, and I'm happy to say that, over the years, I think, the Jewish community and the Christian community have formed, really incredible bonds with each other, and to sort of move beyond sort of the
Wow.
parochial and colloquialisms and the narrowness of on both sides of the aisle.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's,
I
and there's,
honestly,
I think,
Robert, I didn't know that was a thing, okay? I mean, I've only been a Christian for
oh,
like
that was the
5
thing.
minutes in the grand scheme of things. I've never heard anyone in my church say anything like that before. That's crazy.
Well, yeah, it is. But look, I
Okay.
grew up with different things where people would throw a penny on the street and go, here, Jew, go get it. Right. I mean, so there were some interesting things. Although I will say, I had a very close friend of mine, may he rest in peace. Olin Jackson. We trained martial arts together. A black gentleman, and became very fast friends. And we talked about racism a lot. And what he said to me is, because I would say, look, I grew up Jewish. I know what it is to be discriminated against. He said, but the difference, Robert, is you don't wear it on your skin color.
Mm,
People can see me a mile away and they know I'm black and I'm coming this way. Right.
yeah.
So it was a really interesting dialogue and a very interesting exchange with him. But through history, you look at the different stereotypes, the Jews with the long nose. If you go
Mm,
back to Oliver Twist, and I'm going to give you history, right? Or at least literature, right? Fagin, clearly they never said he was Jewish, but Fagin was sort of the hook nose guy. I mean,
mm,
so there's a whole lot of sort of the stereotypes built in that I'm happy to say I think we've overcome. But growing up, you just dealt with it. I mean,
yeah.
there was no talk per se.
Yeah. And a lot of what I've heard you say in our conversations, or what I've taken away from our conversations, is you grew up a fighter. You basically you were kind of justice oriented from your youth. You were focused on whether you did correctly or not all of the time. It seems like, you know, values of like hard work, family, like those things were really instilled in you in your youth, and then they were reinforced through martial arts and some of the things that you participated in as a young man. Can you say more about how that how, martial arts and your youth has shaped the man that you are today?
Well, let's back up. But first of all, I appreciate the question. Let's back up for a second. I
Okay.
didn't start by being a fighter. I started by getting beat up a lot, and
Okay. All
realized
right. All
and,
right.
and realized I didn't like it. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, you only gotta have to get kicked in the head by a mule a few times to realize you don't like it. I still remember it's either sixth grade or seventh grade. I was getting picked on by the school bully.
Oh, name him.
And
Name him. What's his
no,
name?
no, not going there. So, went home to my father crying, beat up. And so he calls the other guy's father, and not to chew him out, but he said, bring your kid to the school. So both of us went to the school. The fathers are standing there, and they said, we want both of you to go behind the school and fight it out. Right. Which we did. And look,
What?
I won't say that I won, but I gave as good as I got. And that was a valuable lesson for me. My father wanted to teach me how to fight. And, you don't shirk from a fight. Right. That sort of is seminal for me.
Okay.
I mean, can you imagine people doing that today? Two parents take their kids to the school and tell them to
No.
start, fighting each other.
Oh, no,
Um,
CPS would be knocking on your door.
yeah. We call them DIFAS, Division of Youth and Family Services. But so that really started, and then the day I was 17, and I played all the sports. I played, unlike our guest Steve, who's a basketball guy. I played football. I was a middle linebacker. I was small and I was mean and I liked to hit people.
Mm.
And I played baseball, which was really my passion. Had things been different, I should have been a center fielder for the New York Yankees, but that didn't work like that.
Okay. All right.
So at 17, I walked into a martial arts school because, I wanted to formally learn how to fight back. And I just stuck it. It's been 40 years. And the first class I said, this is sort of my life. And martial arts at this point is not something I do. It's who I am. It's not, when you get to the point where you can do damage, you realize you're not supposed to. It's only in self-defense. It's only to protect those people you love, but it does instill in you a code, and it does instill in you a fighting spirit to fight for what's right. And that's why this whole thing with Israel Appreciation Day is so important, because I will tell you, to segue to Israel Appreciation Day,
Yeah.
because that's really what I want to talk about today. So Justice Potter Stewart, the late Supreme Court justice in the early 1900s, or the early 20th century, 1900s, 20th century, was asked to define pornography. And he said, I can't define it, but I know it when I see it. Right. Likewise, the horrific attacks on October 7th of Israel, on Israel and Israeli citizens and men, women, and children. Right. If we can't call that evil, right. I don't know. I can't define evil, but I know it when I see it. And that was evil. Right. If we've lost our capacity to call out evil when we see it, then to me, we have lost our humanity, and perhaps we're beyond redemption. So that was such a seminal thing. And I was involved politically in Jewish issues. And, again, not like our guest coming on, who's way more involved over many more years than I have been. But, and that's Steve Rosenberg. But there was just something galvanizing. It was tight. It's almost like I've had enough of this, and someone has to do something. Not that by myself I can, but it cultivated or brought up in me this fighting spirit that I haven't felt in a long time. And what it made me understand is that there's no one. I mean, yes, it's important to support Israel, and that's what we're trying to do with Israel Appreciation Day, but it's also about this country, right? It's about the hearts and minds in this country. It's about trying to change the narrative, because the narrative on the other side is really simple, right? Israel equals an occupier equals bad, and Palestinians / Hamas equals victims equals good. That's their narrative. And there was nothing in an organized fashion that looks at Israel and all the wonderful things that Israel has done and contributed to the world. And it's not just because they're a Jewish state or the Jewish homeland. It's not about the Holocaust. It's not about that they're a U.S. ally, but it's everything else that Israel represents that no one was focusing on, and that really was the genesis. And I love to take credit for coming up with the idea of Israel Appreciation Day. A friend of mine did that. It's not me, but we talked about it, and I went, "This is a great idea." And so we've been putting this together for about 6 months now with the help of people like our guest Steve Rosenberg, who's been a huge help in this along the way, and we've built a good team of people to do it. But this is all about fighting back. And this is all about the next generation, because when you and I are long dead and gone, we have to make sure these people understand the seminal importance of Israel, not just as a Jewish state, not just as a U.S. ally, right? But for everything else that makes it so seminal, right? There's an old saying that as goes Israel, goes the fate of the Western world. And I believe that.
Yeah. Yep, Robert, I love it. And y'all stay with us. We've got Steve Rosenberg. He's going to be coming on in the last segment. So stay tuned. We're going to take a break and hear more about Israel Appreciation Day.
Why Israel Appreciation Day? Because no one is telling the Israel story about why Israel's existence is so important, not just as a Jewish state, and not just as an ally of the United States, but for all the positive achievements Israel has contributed to the world in science, technology, medicine, human rights, religious freedoms, rule of law, democracy, and so on. We need to start winning the public relations information war and change the narrative, especially among our younger generations. We need to get the information out there and arm those people who understand the seminal importance of Israel to the world. And being the Jewish homeland doesn't begin to tell that story of why Israel is so important. It's something we all can come together on, and honestly, it's something we all must come together on. It is imperative the general public understands the nature of the very special relationship between Israel and the United States, and Israel's importance to the world. So please join us on September 18th as we celebrate Israel Appreciation Day. You'll also be able to find us live on all the streaming channels, including Roku, Apple TV, Dish Network, and others. Because never again is now.
All right. Now, Robert, you have been involved in politics for many years, Jewish politics specifically.
Well, and not not solely Jewish politics, but politics in general.
Right. I mean, well, you were the Jewish board of the.
So I was on the President's Council. Well, so I was on the President's Council for Republican Jewish Coalition back in the 90s when Newt Gingrich took over, and into the mid 2000s. I was the executive director of the Jewish outreach for the reelection of President Bush in 2004. And if you really want to get technical, it really wasn't Bush Cheney. It was through the auspices of RPOF, which was the Republican Party of Florida. But they sort of outsourced it to us, and so there was a whole team of us. So I was the executive director, but you're only as good as the people that are around you. It was absolutely a team effort, and we worked together, ate together, lived together, cried together, and fought together, and ultimately we had a good outcome in 2004. That's for sure. Because up until President Trump, I would tell you that George W. Bush was the best friend that Israel had as a U.S. president. Obviously, I think Donald Trump has sort of one-upped him in terms of his support for Israel. But at the time, he was the best friend Israel had in the White House for sure. So making sure he was reelected was an important thing to do. Much like I would argue, not to get into politics, that I think Kamala Harris, if she gets elected, will be the first pro-Hamas president we're going to have.
So say a little bit about you mentioned Trump being more pro-Israel than W. Can you say? I'm assuming you're talking about the move of the Capitol. Or of the
so the embassy, moving the embassy to Jerusalem is one thing, but the Abraham Accords are groundbreaking.
Talk about that.
I mean, peace. I mean, when Menachem Begin and Anwar Sadat, inked their peace deal, that was groundbreaking. But to get the other Arab countries to sign formal peace treaties with Israel, United Arab Emirate, and don't forget, by all understanding, the Saudis were on the verge of signing a
They
peace deal
were.
with Israel. And look, I don't know that for a fact. I'm not in the Trump administration. I have no, I have no inside knowledge of it, but everything I've read and everyone I've talked to who is on the inside said that was that was the casus belli. That was the reason that Hamas launched the attack when they did, because obviously they're a satellite, lesser than Hezbollah, but they're a satellite of Iran. And really, I mean, Iran really is the head of the dragon in terms of the attacks on Israel. This is all coming through Iran, and it doesn't end until the Iran issue is resolved. So
Robert,
all this, what?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Do you remember? I think we actually covered this when we first started the show. The Biden administration giving the $6 billion to Iran,
Well,
unfreezing
let's not
assets or
forget the
whatever.
Obama administration. I think it was 18 billion at night. You remember those pictures of the pallets of money going onto the plane?
Pallets of
Not
cash.
not to mention
Terrorists.
the bolstering of the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, right? So,
Yeah.
I mean, elections, ladies and gentlemen, do have consequences, and while there may be a deep state and there may be, sort of the what would you call it, administrative state,
Mm.
who's at the top does matter to all of this. So I would argue that peace with Bahrain and peace with the United Arab Emirate was a precursor to peace with Saudi Arabia, which to me would have radically changed the dynamics in the Middle East.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that was the reason that the attacks occurred when they did, only now to find out that, the tunnels and the money and all the monies that were being given to the Palestinians weren't used for their people.
Yeah.
They were used to build tunnels, buy munitions, and stockpile weapons, right? I mean, that's pretty obvious at this point. But I would say there are many things that make Donald Trump the most pro-Israel president we've had and the most consequential president we've had in terms of Middle East politics. But first and foremost, it's the Abraham Accords for sure.
And that's, I asked Benjamin to look it up. So UAE, Bahrain, and Morocco. And you are correct. They were on the verge of, I think, at least 3 or 4 other peace agreements or like trade agreements. The trade agreements, you guys, are almost the equivalent of a peace agreement, because it means people are willing to do business with one another. And that is huge. So tell me, Robert, when you hear other people who are Jewish talk about how, they don't think politics are important, or they don't want to get involved, or, they just kind of are like, I just want to be over here being myself and not get involved. What does that make you think? How do you feel about that?
Angry. Look, let's go back to the summer of 2020. I think what you really have to talk about is the social justice movements, right? So the vanguard of most such social justice movements were, a large proportion were Jewish, right? And when it turned out that these organizations were anti-Semitic, the Jewish community, and mostly the liberal Jewish community, I mean, obviously not the conservative or the Orthodox Jewish community, but the Reformed Jewish community or liberal Jewish community, which is unfortunately the majority of Jews in the country, are having this moment of cognitive dissonance, which is, how could these organizations that we supported, that we were there, that we were the vanguard of these parties, how could they turn against us? And what they didn't understand is they were always anti-Semitic. I mean, this whole wokeism is sort of a old religion made new. And the Jews were always, I mean, what's the term? Useful idiots in that kind of in that scenario. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens in this election. But that's why Israel Appreciation Day becomes so important, because when you saw these current protests and college kids on campuses, and you ask them what they're protesting, they have no idea. They have no idea what the river to the sea means, right? And honestly, if you go back to the Bible, they're really talking about the Euphrates, but that's a whole different discussion. What the pro-Hamas movement, or as I call them, the Death Eaters, right? Death to America, really are talking about, from the river to the sea. We've talked about this. It's the Jordan River to the Red Sea. And as I've said, I was at a conference, I don't know, early February of this year, and someone said, well, why do they hate the Jews? And I said, they don't just hate the Jews. I said, we're the tip of the spear. we're the canary in the coal mine. If they drive us into the sea, and I had to explain to him that's what the river to the sea means.
Yeah.
I asked the gentleman, I said, "Are you Christian?" He goes, "Yeah." I said, "You're next."
Yeah.
I
That
said, "Because
includes
it's
you.
about it's about Judeo-Christian values, and there's an old um, um, Middle East or Arabic or really Muslim Middle East proverb that basically says after Saturday comes Sunday, right?" So and I will tell you that the Christian community at large has been incredibly supportive of Israel Appreciation Day because, as a friend of mine said, and he was on the show, Chris Widener, again, one of the leading motivational speakers in the country, if not the world, said, "Robert, we need to stick together because they're coming after both of us. Israel's being attacked from the outside. We're being attacked from the inside."
Yeah.
Right.
And
I
I
mean,
think American Christians have it very easy. We don't deal with persecution here. They don't understand. Most Americans don't know that Christians are being killed all over the globe. They were killed during World War II, just like everybody else. They don't want the state cannot have any opponents.
well, we talked about it, Erica. There's a genocide going on in Africa right now where the Muslims are killing the Christians. There's a genocide going on in East Asia where the Hindus are being slaughtered by the Muslims. Right. The
Yep.
Chinese are there's a genocide against the Uyghurs. Right. But you never hear about it in the news. And I hate to coin a phrase because it sort of makes my skin crawl a little bit, but there is some truth to it, which is in terms of U.S. media, no
Yeah.
Jews, no news. Right.
Wow.
And that's a really harsh statement and hard for me to say. But why aren't we covering that?
Yeah.
Why
Well,
is it just about Israel being committing genocide in Gaza, which they're not?
yeah.
I mean, it's not
Oh,
Israel that uses their children or their people as human shields. It's not Israel that calls for the wiping out, whose charter calls for the wiping out of another people. It's not Israel that teaches their children to be suicide bombers.
yeah.
Right. And we've talked about this.
Yeah.
If Hamas, let's say Iran, but if Hamas lays down their arms, there'd be peace. If Israel lays down its arms, there'd be no Israel, right? I
There's no
mean,
Israel.
that's it. It's not
Yeah.
that complicated.
And I think what's so fascinating to me has been something that you mentioned, which is the movement sort of eating itself, right? So
Sure.
I think because Jewish people have been persecuted, they have a tendency to want to be more compassionate to other people, and yet they end up getting kind of mixed up with people who are like, yeah, but I don't like you ultimately.
So,
We're on the same team until the rubber meets the road.
so there's a term called tikkun olam, right? To heal the
Mm,
world, right? Which is
mm,
what we're taught, and I think that term has been I'm sure there are people who will disagree with it, but I think it has been misinterpreted, right? You're supposed to
mm,
do good deeds. You're supposed to make the world a better place.
okay.
So the goal is laudable, right? The goal is a good thing, but I can tell you. So being up in New England was in a temple that was a Reformed synagogue, and that was fine. And I know I'm the conservative there, and that's fine too. And it got to the point where they started to preach sort of this moral equivalence between one man's terrorist as another man's freedom fighter from the
Yeah.
Bema. And I said to the rabbi, I said, look, I come here for spiritual comfort. I come here to be with mishpacha, right, with my family, and regardless, and and leave politics at the door, right? But if you're going to preach this kind of thing from the Bema, I can't be here, right? Because
Mm,
that doesn't provide me with spiritual comfort. We're supposed to come together as a community, right? And by
yeah.
the way, bringing this back to Israel Appreciation Day, that's also what we're trying to do here, right? We're
Yeah.
taking this is a nonpartisan, interfaith, grassroots event where
Yeah.
people who probably don't agree on a lot of other issues agree that supporting Israel and Israel's right to self-defense and all the things that make Israel special
Yep.
is what we're all coming together to celebrate and to educate, because we want to educate the young people who are going to be back in college campuses come September, right? And just
Yep.
in a week or two from now, or if they're not already back. A lot of my friends are dropping their kids off at college. So this is a really unique thing that's never been done before. And it's a broadcast TV event that's going to be live, undisclosed location, because we did have our venue cancel us several weeks ago when they found out it was a pro-Israel event.
Wow.
So we decided to take this virtual, and it's going to be even bigger and better. God closes a door, he opens a window. But this is a coming together of people. Let's put aside the things we don't agree on, and let's focus on what we agree on, which is the seminal importance of Israel, not only to the Middle East, but to the Western world, and all the things that this little country the size of New Jersey contributes: rule of law, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, right? Freedom of the press, democracy, capitalism, all the medical and technological advances. Israel, our theme is Israel, a modern miracle, which it is, but an ancient hope, which it also is.
And on that note, we're going to take a quick break to hear about Israel Appreciation Day. And when we get back,
stay tuned. Steve Rosenberg.
Yes, ladies
going
and
to join us for the last segment.
Stay tuned.
Why Israel Appreciation Day? Because no one is telling the Israel story about why Israel's existence is so important, not just as a Jewish state and not just as an ally of the United States, but for all the positive achievements Israel has contributed to the world in science, technology, medicine, human rights, religious freedoms, rule of law, democracy, and so on. We need to start winning the public relations information war and change the narrative, especially among our younger generations. We need to get the information out there and arm those people who understand the seminal importance of Israel to the world. And being the Jewish homeland doesn't begin to tell that story of why Israel is so important. It's something we all can come together on, and honestly, it's something we all must come together on. It is imperative the general public understands the nature of the very special relationship between Israel and the United States and Israel's importance to the world. So please join us on September 18th as we celebrate Israel Appreciation Day. You'll also be able to find us live on all the streaming channels, including Roku, Apple TV, Dish Network, and others. Because never again is now.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, before we bring in our special guest, Steve Rosenberg, make sure you like this video, share it with your friends so they can hear all of the amazing things Steve is about to share with us. And most importantly, subscribe to the channel so that you never miss an episode. All right.
And ladies and gentlemen, speaker, author, former chief operating officer of Federation of Philadelphia, Steve Rosenberg, and in full disclosure, a close friend. We've been working together on Israel Appreciation Day for probably 6 months now. Steve, welcome to the people. Thrilled to have you.
Thrilled to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Let's jump right into this. I know Israel and Israel Appreciation Day is close to your heart. What do you hope we get out of Israel Appreciation Day? I mean, you and I have had our nose to the grindstone for a long time, so it's sometimes hard to have a broader perspective.
Ultimately, I hope that we don't need to have an Israel Appreciation Day. I hope that every day is Israel Appreciation Day, because that's the way it should be. We shouldn't have to have an Israel Appreciation Day because, as you said, Robert, every single day somebody is appreciating something that the people in Israel have given us, whether that be in agriculture, in medicine, in financial, your cell phone, every single day. Every single day, Israel contributes to society. So I hope that we don't have to do Israel Appreciation Day for too long. How about that?
Touche. Well put. Although I think, given the state of things, we're going to have it for. And folks, this is our inaugural event. Our intention is to do this every year and make this an annual event. But I think, Steve, I think you're right. So when you look at what's going on in Israel now, right? Hezbollah is sort of ramping up, getting ready to attack Israel, obviously preemptively, I think, set them back a little bit. But what? Just because you're much more familiar with the geopolitics than I am, what do you think the next move on the chessboard is? And does Iran get involved directly, in your opinion?
I think that Iran has gotten involved. Iran controls the Houthis. Iran controls Hezbollah. Iran controls Hamas. And I am not a geopolitical expert. There are much smarter people out there than me. But if you study this, if you pay attention, if you look around, they actually, it is better for Iran to have this slow drip, to keep Israel's army occupied in the south so that Hezbollah can send rockets from the north. Think about it. There used to be a much larger, thriving community in Israel's north, in the Golan Heights. Those Israelis don't live there anymore. So in theory, they're sort of winning that part of the war because Israel has been so focused in the south. So this slow drip, if you will, is very positive for Iran. This sounds counterintuitive, but Israel actually needs a bit of an escalation so it can completely do what it needs to do, end this thing and move on.
And again, I know I'm sort of, setting you up on this one, but how do you solve the Gaza problem? What do you do with Gaza? Let's assume you defeat Hamas, right? And obviously Israel Appreciation Day is about Israel may win the war, but if we lose the battle for hearts and minds here, you lose the bigger battle, and we can talk about that. But I'm trying to figure out, and I've talked to various people, how do you solve the Gaza problem? What do you do with Gaza when you're done? Right, once you defeat Hamas.
Good question.
Yeah, if I had that answer, I think I'd be working in the White House. But I think there's a couple of things going on here, right? There's control of the Philadelphia corridor, which Egypt has been selfishly controlling because they're the ones that are helping and have been helping Hamas control the money, the food. This is not about Israel not letting food or supplies into Gaza. They've always let food in. It has been taken, stolen by the bad actors. So you have Egypt, which, as you said earlier, Robert, Begin and Sadat got together a long time ago and forged a great friendship, which has been kept going for now about 50 years almost. But we need a willing partner in Egypt. We need a willing partner in Jordan, which is Israel's largest neighbor on the east. And we need a willing partner in the White House. We need people that understand that Israel is our greatest ally. Israel has not just a great military, but incredible natural resources. Israel is and has been a willing partner in the Abraham Accords. And Ericka, the only country you didn't mention was Sudan. And it is expandable. And the Abraham Accords have been, in my opinion, the greatest gift since Israel became a state in 1948, without question. Instead of stopping the Abraham Accords like Biden did when he came into office, he should have said, I might not like Donald Trump, but I like this path to peace. And let's expand the Abraham Accords. I wrote a piece last week, and I called it the two-state delusion, because anybody that puts their hope on the two-state solution also believes in the tooth fairy and Santa Claus, because it can't happen.
This is I literally.
There is no Santa Claus? They've been lying to me all these years?
I'm sorry. The Easter Bunny isn't real either, by the way.
Okay, here's the deal. Okay,
depressing.
I'm old enough to remember when Reagan was president, and I think they were talking about a two-state solution back then. I feel like that's been rejected by every Hamas leader there has been. Wait, how old am I now?
We're talking Palestinian leaders, sure.
Palestinian leader, whatever,
It started in 1948 when they were both given states at the UN, and Israel gladly took it. Israel would have taken anything, right? And the Arabs not only didn't take the state, they attacked Israel on day one. And Israel, without an army, fought them off, okay? How about, let's jump fast forward to the Oslo Accords, where Clinton brought Arafat to the White House lawn. The greatest terrorist maybe in the history of the world, Yasser Arafat, was brought to the White House lawn to make peace with Israel. He was given the greatest land deal probably in history. And what did he do? He started an intifada and started to kill and attack Jews instead of saying yes. They have rejected peace at every instance, at every crossroads, at every opportunity. They've been given land. The Oslo Accords divided Judea and Samaria, which some people call the West Bank, into three areas: Area A, B, and C. Area A has Ramallah, Hebron, and it gives the Palestinian Authority complete control. They can't control it. The bad actors take over. Area B gives Israel control over civil matters. Over security and Palestinian Authority on civil matters. And Area C, Israel has complete control. But Israel has to maintain security control. Otherwise, there will be no more Israel. And the best example, really, of all of this is when Sharon pulled out of Gaza in 2005, left them the most beautiful possible beachfront area that you could imagine. And what happened within a year? Hamas took over, won the election, and they started to rip Gaza apart, use the materials to build tunnels into Israel so they could go and kill Jews. Instead of saying, you know what, we have a state. We have a gorgeous beachfront state that looks like Dubai. No, we're going to use this land and all this materials to go back and kill Jews. This is fact. This is indisputable, undeniable fact.
And that's what I just have to believe at this point that the people we're hearing from are evil. Because you either have to be so ignorant of history that it's borderlining on,
they're super
again,
smart. They're making up. Listen, whether you like Donald Trump or you don't like Donald Trump, when he came up with the term fake news media, bingo, arrow right in the middle of the bullseye. Because if you watch the news, okay, any of the news, they're not giving you the real news. They're giving you the slant that they want to give. If Israel cured cancer tomorrow, David Muir would come on ABC and say, but why? Cancer's good. It keeps doctors working. No matter what Israel does, says, or do, it's wrong. Hamas didn't just go in and commit these unbelievable atrocities on October 7th or all the times before that. They have waged an unbelievable PR war for decades, beginning with the indoctrination of kids in schools, in K through 12 schools, with educators, with administrators. It's gone on to college campuses, and we have lost an entire generation of young people that don't know the difference between right and wrong. You guys were talking about how did Israel become an oppressor nation? Well, people divide this country into two classes. You're either an oppressor or you're the oppressed. That's complete idiocy.
Yeah.
That's how we got where we are.
So we've got some comments here in the chat.
Go for it.
Yeah, Steve Rosenberg is an amazing Jewish leader. So people are in here loving on you, man.
Wow.
Brilliant speaker, learned so much. Thank you guys. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Anna, for commenting. This has been enlightening for me. Yeah, but I interrupted your question, Robert. What you got?
Well, I want to turn to domestic politics because obviously there's a little thing called an election coming up this November.
There is,
right? Well, last time I checked, I mean, we have to get through the debate first and we'll see whether the microphones are going to be on or off. But it doesn't get canceled. But the thing I am struck with, and I'm not. I think that the worm turned, as the expression goes, in 2008 when Obama became president, because I think that he divided this country along every racial and financial fissure you could find, right? Rich from poor, black from white, men from women, all of that. But one of the things about the Obama presidency to me is like Yasser Arafat, right? Yasser Arafat would say one thing to the West in English, and he would say something totally different to his followers in Arabic, right? Likewise, Barack Obama would say one thing like, well, if you like your healthcare, you can keep it. And yet in practical reality, he would tell the American public what they wanted to hear. The press would eat it up, but he would do something different. I see the same thing in Kamala Harris based on certainly her DNC convention speech. What do you see in her? I mean, is there any remote chance she's a friend of Israel in any real terms?
Who could know? All we know is that she can read off of a teleprompter for 45 minutes. That's all we know. She gives no speeches. I don't know what she stands for. I don't know what she believes. Let her do some interviews. She
believes that time is significance and that the significance of time is significant.
I believe that too. I think all time.
Is that what she said? Come on, seriously?
But no, Robert, seriously. I say to people all the time, I would love to believe that Kamala Harris will be an Israel advocate. But you said something about a little while ago that leadership matters. I think that this is a team sport. And I believe that Team Biden, I think Joe Biden in his heart has wanted to be pro-Israel. I think the people on his team have been awful. The capitulation towards Iran have been embarrassing. My friend Jeff Bartos, who is, Robert, is a great, one of the great advocates for Israel. Okay. He posed a question the other day. He said, were you better off, and this ties into the election, were you better off 6 years ago or today? And don't answer that question. Let's pose that question to the mullahs in Iran. Were they better off 6 years ago, or are they better off today? And will they be better off under a Harris presidency or a Trump presidency? I don't know, but I've seen the future. And under Trump, they were insolvent. They were irrelevant. They had nowhere to go but up. Then all of a sudden, we start giving them cash and release the sanctions and made them relevant and important again. And by the way, they don't just hate the Jews. They hate America. So I don't care if you're Jewish, if you're Christian, if you're Episcopalian, if you're Protestant, because if there's no more Jews left, guess what? They're going to come after you. And so I tell all my Jewish friends, to me, this is a one issue election. I don't care if you believe in climate change, gun control, abortion rights, all super important issues. You like education reform? Great. If there's no Jews left, those issues don't matter. So I don't know what Kamala Harris stands for. I would like them to let her speak, but you and I both know they're not going to. So Biden didn't speak for 2 months. Kamala Harris, she doesn't have to raise any more money. She's got like $600 million in the bank. She doesn't have to make any friends. She got the nomination without even, going out to campaign, which is fine. She's the vice president. But all she should be doing is campaigning on issues. But she doesn't do that. So I don't know what her issues are.
Oh, yeah. And think about this. The first debate happens after mail-in ballots go out. So a bunch of states around the country have mail-in early balloting starting in September, and they're going out before there's even a debate. And
wait a minute. Joe Biden debates before the convention and the primaries, and the Harris Trump debate is after the ballots are out. Yeah, that's not a coincidence, is it?
That's right. That's right. Yeah, and Tilly said she doesn't say much. She stays out of the faces of reporters, avoiding answering. She's going to do it, y'all. She's going to do it. She's going to stay in the basement, just like Joe Biden did.
Well, I think in Steve's parlance, she's going to play rope-a-dope for 2 or 3 months, and just and because I know Steve's a big sports guy.
She's playing prevent defense, and you can't win a game playing prevent defense for 4 quarters. You can do it in the last 2 minutes of a game, but if you start playing prevent defense at the beginning of a game, there's a good chance you're not going to score any points. So look, we still have a long way to go. Ericka, you're right. Ballots are coming out, I think, in North Carolina next week or the week after. So people are starting to vote. So, but anybody can vote. You could be a Democrat or a Republican. I would love to hear what she stands for, right? I think there's some good in Tim Walz. I don't know enough about him. I know some of the things that I completely disagree with him on. But listen, I was dead wrong about guys like John Fetterman. I couldn't have been more wrong, right? So there are great Jewish advocates and Israel advocates in the Democratic Party. Not many, but there are some, like my friend Richie Torres. There is no greater leader than Richie Torres on the state of Israel.
That is for sure. That is right.
So maybe we could be surprised, but we got to hear it. We got to listen. Start talking.
So all right. So let's get into the weeds a little bit on this. During the process that Tim Walz got elected, and by the way, to me, it's Commie Harris and Commie Walz, but that's my own personal opinion. One with a K, one with a C. I know. But they passed over your friend, Governor Josh Shapiro, who I know that you have a relationship with. So they passed over the moderate Jew for the, the Muslim Brotherhood communist governor, in my opinion, of Minnesota. So to me, what does that say about who really controls the Democrat Party? We call them here, by the way, the autocrat party, because you want to see about front loading a process. To me, this was a soft coup, anyways. But what does that say to you? How did you interpret that? Because I know you and I had gone back and forth at the time that they passed over Governor Shapiro, which to me would have been sort of a olive branch to the moderate wing of the party.
Yeah, I don't know how to interpret that. I go back and forth. Josh is a good man. He is a smart man. He has great ambition. I was actually surprised he would be willing to be a number 2. He's always been a number 1. But, the Democrats tend to listen to that small minority called the woke progressive left. And I don't believe that the entire Democratic Party is that way. I think there's a loud, minority on the left, just like on the right. There's a small vocal minority of the far right that doesn't represent all of the GOP. I think most people are here in the center, right? Center left, center right. But they capitulate to these loud, obnoxious people that are America haters. If you look at some of Tim Walz's resume, you could get excited by Tim Walz. I'm not particularly myself excited by it, but they could have had an easy layup. This was a bunny, as they call it in basketball, Robert, to pick Josh Shapiro and have Shapiro and Kamala. And I think that would have given her Pennsylvania. It would have given her an easy road to the White House, and they didn't take it. So you can make any interpretation you want. I've made my own.
Speaking of interpretations, if you like what you hear, if you are getting something out of our conversation with guest Steve Rosenberg, make sure to like this video, share it with your friends, because obviously they need to hear how smart and cool we are, and subscribe to the channel. Give us a 5-star review on that podcast platform. And
Steve, for our listeners, where can they find you if they want to contact you? How do they get to you? I mean, I know you're usually sort of in the fortress of solitude somewhere, and most people can't get to you. So we're very fortunate that you came out of hiding to come talk to us today. But if they want to get you, where do they get you?
You got like a Substack? You got like something?
I do not live in the Unabomber's cabin in my town, like some people might live in mainstream society. I am not a Twitter person, but they could find me on LinkedIn. That's the form that I use. They could follow me. I do a lot of writing on jns.org. And, you know, if they just search my name, they'll find me. But, you know, I hope that these people go on and follow Israel Appreciation Day. I know, Robert, that we were able to bring on One Jewish State as a partner. David Friedman, the greatest ambassador to Israel that the United States have ever had, is out with a book called One Jewish State in a couple of weeks. And it's a real movement to help the state of Israel. And they're going to be a great partner for Israel Appreciation Day. There are some really great grassroots movements that are out there doing this good work. And I would be remiss if I didn't, you know, thank you for contacting me a year or so ago and to get involved and to do this work, because, you know, success against an ambitious agenda takes great people up and down an organization. And Robert, you know how to build an organization and convene people and get consensus. This doesn't happen, Israel Appreciation Day, without your leadership and guidance. And I'm proud to be part of it. And I hope that thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands tune in for however long we need Israel Appreciation Day, and they spread the word about what we're trying to do and what we're trying to accomplish. There's a phenomenal lineup. It's going to be entertaining. It's going to be informative. It's going to be interesting. And people are going to learn a lot, and they're going to come away thinking, wow, I didn't know that about Israel. Or, wow, Israel is going to be the largest supplier of natural gas in the Middle East. Or, oh, maybe Saudi Arabia is going to be the next partner of the Abraham Accords. There's so much to learn. But Israel Appreciation Day is going to be one super important step for people. And then they can make up their own minds, because as one of my all-time favorite TV characters, Fred Sanford, used to say, the truth will set you free.
Well, and, you know, Robert is making a bold thing happen. So everybody go check out Make Bold Things. Wait, Make Bold Things Happen, right?
Make bold things happen.
Make bold things happen.
Gotta read.
IsraelAppreciationDay.com. But Steve, thank you, and thank you for being part of it, and Ericka as well. I mean, it is a team effort. As you said, politics is a team sport. Well, events like this, it's a team effort, and it's not any one person, but, you know, somebody had to light a fire, you know, and, you know, look, I used to play with matches as a kid, lit the park on fire. So I'm always the one who, you know, lights fires. But no, look,
could you give the date, Robert? Could you give the date of the event? There's a date. There's a question for the date. Could you let people know?
September 18th, 6:30 p.m. Go to IsraelAppreciationDay.com. That's East Coast time. It is in an undisclosed location, but it is going to be on streaming channels. It's, you know, it's an event it's a two-way event. If you want to join the event, we hope you do. There's going to be streaming on some social media influencers that we're bringing in. I mean, we're bringing in Hollywood. We're bringing in some musical acts. I can tell you that John Andrasik just signed aboard. He's going to be performing for us there as well. There's a couple other acts that are coming on as well. So we have politicians, we have Main Street, we have Hollywood. It's really a coming together for Israel. And it's just such an important event. But again, like you said, it's going to be educational, but it's also going to be entertaining. And we hope that you'll tune in. IsraelAppreciationDay.com, September 18th at 6:30 p.m. But go to the website. It'll tell you everything you need to know.
Excellent. And go to makeboldthingshappen.com. Check out our guest Steve Rosenberg's book. You're going to be at Israel Appreciation Day. You're going to be one of our speakers. Okay, so you guys, we got 3 minutes left. So
can we come back to the one Jewish state? Because
yeah.
that is something that, thank you for reminding me, I wanted to bring up. Let's talk about the whole movement of one Jewish state, Steve, and encapsulate it for our listeners. What is it compared to what was it, right? I mean, because you and I both know, the two-state solution has been around for a long time. But when people talk about one Jewish state, help us out here.
Well, like I said, Ambassador Friedman came up with, he wrote this book called One Jewish State. And then there's a gentleman by the name of Rabbi Tuli Wise, who I won't say where he lives, but it's not in the United States, created a movement with a few other people to get a bunch of delegates so that we could help really change the votes, change the government, change the way that Israel works internally, and then also the way that people view Israel and in America, and people can get involved in a grassroots level. But as I don't want to speak for Ambassador Friedman, but the way he talks about it, those three words, one Jewish state, there's only one Jewish people, right? Mm-hmm. They have had only one homeland. It is the Jewish homeland. And it has been the Jewish homeland for thousands of years. And it is their state. So it's a simple name, one Jewish state. But when you really think about the meaning of one Jewish state, it says a lot, it means a lot, and it really is a way to push forward into the future. And that's how Jews really have to think. Because as I said earlier, Robert, there's a generation that sees Israel as a bad guy. And if you're a Jew, we need Israel. If there was an Israel in 1938, there'd be at least 6 million more of us sitting here today. And that's the reason that I support Israel. And in addition to everything else, Israel will always be there in case we need it.
I'll also add, it's not just, and Steve very eloquently put, it's not just if you're a Jew, we need Israel. If you're not a Jew, you need Israel.
Of course.
And that's really, to me, the message of Israel Appreciation Day. As a friend of mine said, just Jews supporting Jews doesn't move the needle. No. And that's sort of axiomatic, right? I mean, it's really, the Judeo-Christian world, as I like to refer to it, has to wake up and understand that it's those values that A, Israel protects, and B, are under attack, I would argue, globally.
Yeah,
right?
Thank you for correcting me, because without Israel in the Middle East, it would be nothing but chaos, mass confusion. The Levant would be the Levant, and there would be nothing between the river and the sea.
So to the people who don't understand the term Levant, can you quickly explain that to them? Because a lot of our listeners may not.
The region where Israel is, below Syria, above Egypt, to the west of Jordan, and to the east of the Mediterranean Sea. I mean, it's a little bit larger than that, but it's a word that goes back that means lever. I believe is what it actually means, but it's a word that if you go back into the history, it's when there are Israel haters that speak to the region and they only refer to it as the Levant. They don't even say Israel.
Thank you. I just know, I know the term. I'm not even sure, Ericka, you're familiar with the term, but to our listeners who, that's a kind of term that I just wanted you to explain. So listen, first of all, I want to thank you, Steve, for taking the time to come on. And I say this respectfully, I know how busy you are. So for you to take the time to come on to talk about Israel Appreciation Day, Israeli politics, U.S. politics, very appreciative, my friend. Thank you so much.
Guys, anytime. Keep up the great work. Keep spreading the good message.
All right, you guys, make sure to like, share, and subscribe, and come back and see us next week. Bye.
Take care, folks.